kick this off. First of all, I appreciate everyone joining us today for this conversation, especially given the nature of what this week has been. And while Tuesday showed us that the country is truly divided politically, what's great is I think everyone here, both the panelists and the attendees, is 100% aligned in wanting to address the challenges focused on college to career, the challenges facing college students as they're trying to launch their professional careers. And beyond the moral and social imperative to do so, I think everyone here can agree that it also makes good business sense. So in the interest of speed, I'm going to quickly introduce everyone and then we're going to just jump right in. So first, we have Corinne from Winning Edge, which works with diverse student athletes who are currently in college, helping them again throughout college and in launching their career. Jamie from the University Innovation Alliance, and UIA is a network of 11 large state universities focused on supporting the underrepresented students at those schools. Tania from the Dream.us, which is working with DACA students and dreamers, helping them again throughout college and in launching their career. And last and certainly not least, Todd from the Dell Foundation, whose network of Dell Scholars are all first-generation college students, again, where they're focused on helping the students succeed both in college and afterwards. Again, if you have questions, please feel free to use the Q&A and we'll try to address them during the conversation. So with that, let's jump in. First, again, a lot has changed during this pandemic. I guess if we look back 9 months, I'd really love to understand what were some of the biggest challenges the students you work with faced in college to career even before the current crisis. And Todd, let's start with you since I introduced you last.
Sure. Thanks, Jeffrey, and I'm thrilled to be here. So for our students, just to be make sure we're all on the same page. So the Dell Scholars program supports low-income, usually first-gen college goers coming out of high school. We have about 2,000 students in our network, and the issues that they face when trying to transition from college to career, I'd say there's 3 of them. One is that our students typically have a lack of corporate experience that they've accumulated while they were in college. There are challenges for them to have, for example, summer internships that are unpaid because our students just can't afford not to be working in a paid capacity over their summer. Another issue students have is a lack of a personal network to provide leads or make introductions for them into the white-collar world. Many of these students, their personal networks do not include anybody who works in a professional office corporate capacity, and so it's very hard for them to sort of get through the door. And then lastly, I'd say they sometimes have trouble accessing competitive corporate jobs based on the schools they attend.
No, it's a great point. And I mean, Corinne, let's jump over to you on that, because you're working a lot with student athletes that, again, face some of those challenges just because of the nature that they're diverse in particular, but do they face different challenges as student athletes on top of that?
I think a lot of people assume, well, they're getting a free scholarship, so they have access to all these things. And what people don't realize that when there's a resume workshop on campus, they're at practice. When there's a career fair, they're at an away game. And when those 3-month internships become available during the summer or something like that, they're actually still training. So they don't really have that ability to leave whether I'm at the University of Tennessee in Knoxville, Tennessee. I can't go to New York for 3 months out of the year to do an internship and gain that experience to put on my resume.
Yeah, no, again, 100% agree. The other thing, Todd, you said was where they attend university. And Jamie, I mean, you're working with 11 of the most prestigious research institutions across the US. There are companies visiting these schools. What about the students you're working with?
Yeah, so I'll preface this to say that I've been leading over the last 2.5 years a UIA scale initiative that's focused on bridging the gap from college to career and working with 7 out of our 11 institutions to reimagine that, and also working with a nationally representative employer working group that's also collaboratively helping us redesign college to career around the needs of students. So there's actually been, out of the research and the empathy work that we've done as a part of this project, We found 5 things actually that was pre-COVID, and I think it's just been exacerbated since COVID's happened. But number one, students don't have the career exploration opportunities that they need early enough. So they're oftentimes waiting until the very last minute, and even then they're not sure where to start. Number two, they need help balancing their immediate financial needs with long-term career preparation. They know it's something that they need to do. They don't know how to start, and they feel as though they're just floundering, trying to figure it out on their own. And then also that career readiness needs to be, it tends to be a separate activity or entity on campus rather than something that's integrated into their experience and easy for them to access. So they want more career relevant content just incorporated into the classroom. So it's easy, it's accessible, they don't have to seek it out. And then finally, I'll mention that students they really don't have clear access or equitable access, I would say, to mentors, career professionals, or even alumni that they can learn from as they explore interests and help increase and improve their career skills as well.
And the alumni and mentoring is a great point, because I think a lot of programs are a lot of schools are trying to kick off mentoring and coaching programs, but sometimes they feel artificial, or they feel, what we're hearing from students is they feel like, well, this person comes from a different background or has a different set of experiences that aren't relevant. I mean, Tania, given that you're working exclusively with Dreamers, is that exacerbated with your student population?
Surely is. And so at the Dream.us, we work currently with about 4,000 Dreamers that are currently attending 70 colleges. And we have about 1,500 students who have graduated from college over the past couple of years. And I want to echo exactly what Todd said about the needs of his students are exactly some of the needs of our students. The average household population for household income for our students is $30,000. So they're very low income, vast majority first generation college students. So all the issues that Jamie, Todd, and Corinne are talking about, our students face. But on top of that, what happens with our students is that, and a similar, I'm sure, to other low income students, but it's exacerbated with DACA students, is that our students don't have access to federal aid or state in most states. And therefore, they are having to work 2-3 jobs in order to support their families and pay for their school, trying to go to full-time education. So the pressure on their time is very high. And oftentimes, they don't have the time to do all the career exploration or even the applying for different internships or jobs, because it takes 20, 30 applications to get one interview. So the time crunch is very real, on top of the anxiety that the students feel. And the other thing that they face is that lack of awareness about DACA, the DACA population among employers and corporations. So even though there's a big number of students are Dreamers already working, many employers do not understand that DACA students have full employment authorization, that they can be hired the same way that a citizen or that a legal resident can be hired in this country. And oftentimes HR people or hiring managers do not understand that and think that it might be an issue to hire DACA students.
Well, and that's a really important point. I want to dig more on that in a second, but you brought up something I wasn't thinking about before, where the students need to work to generate enough income to support themselves. Again, whether it's the DACA students because they don't qualify for financial aid, or in Todd's case, again, the Dell Scholars who are just working because they need to, or really, again, anyone here. Are the jobs the students are doing, the part-time jobs while on campus, are those preparing them for those full-time roles? Are they providing opportunities for career exploration, or are they more mutually exclusive, where they're driving an Uber or working retail? Again, I want to step away from the argument that even driving an Uber or working retail still prepares the students when they understand, but let's put that aside. I mean, are they getting professional opportunities where they're working and earning?
Yeah, for our students, Jeffrey, the answer is no. Very, very few of our students have access to what I'd call professional work experience. They're working retail, they're working, like you said, rideshare, they're working, many of them are getting work study on the campuses. Sometimes that's in an office sort of environment within the school, but rarely it is, and rarely is that experience translatable to the type of job that their major and their career goals aspire for. So the answer for our students is generally no.
Tania, what about yours?
I would say, yeah, I agree with Todd. They're not getting those opportunities. On the other hand, it's also, I think, very important to help them understand on how they can turn their current jobs into professional opportunities. Oftentimes, our students can learn to advocate for themselves with their current job employers to see how that could be maybe turned into an internship or getting a different type of responsibility, or even how to market the skills that they are currently learning to the employers, and for employers to understand that these students do have what they're looking for. For the DACA students, they're incredibly problem solvers. These students have had challenges and barriers in their lives, their entire lives. And in spite of that, they're succeeding, they're thriving. And that takes people that are resourceful, people that can problem solve, people that do not get overwhelmed by the challenges, but that can rise above them. And so many of those soft skills that are so hard to find, so hard to teach, unless you learn them through your lived experiences. And for employers to also, I think, are understanding that more and more, but to see that as what the students bring to them is crucial.
By the way, I love that you brought that up. There was a great article I was reading this morning that I shared with the team. The title, and we could share it later, called "Skills Aren't Hard, They're Soft, They're Durable or Perishable." And again, I wasn't trying to minimize the value of a job at Uber or retail, because to your point, I do think there's a lot of translatable things. And I think that actually goes back to something Jamie said, which is there really, or does there really need to be this distinction between the classes that are getting you job ready and the traditional liberal arts class? Isn't the real issue that students, and for that matter, employers, don't necessarily appreciate the crosswalks between those skills? Jamie, any thoughts on that?
Oh yeah, lots of thoughts. How much time do we have? Yeah, so we actually we had 7 campuses that were piloting, different innovative interventions when it comes to college career. In this past spring semester, summer semester, during COVID, in the craziness, they were piloting these new things. And one thing that we saw as a part of the outcomes from that work over and over again was that even the simplest intervention that would happen in the classroom made an amazing difference for students. So we're talking like a faculty member just understanding what soft skills the students were gaining in their course and applying those into a syllabus or as an assignment even, culminating in a student receiving an internship. So we actually had a University of Central Florida student that gained confidence learning what skills she already had, to Tania's point, just because she had an assignment that her professor had given her as a part of coursework that identified what skills she already had, what skills she was gaining as a part of that class, and then was able to create her first resume and have the confidence to submit that resume and apply for an internship with the Smithsonian. And she was able to get that internship. And that's an amazing and an incredible outcome, just because a faculty member had said, hey, this actually applies to workforce preparation, what I'm doing in the classroom. And I'm going to give these students just a really simple resume building assignment that can help them learn what skills they have and what skills they can take beyond the class. So we've seen this over and over again with faculty training programs that were piloted several months ago.
Hey, Jeffrey,
Well,
before you start, I want to really second, third, fourth that, because I think so many times it's overlooked. We're assuming they're getting these skills. We're assuming, oh, there's a career center on campus, they're going to that. They not.
Well, I want to build upon that. I was actually about to jump to you because one of the things that frustrates me, because again, completely agree, the students need to go to the career centers and there's more things we can do. But there's also this issue that frustrates me, as the four of you know, that employers complain about the skills gap, or they'll complain we hire people and their communication skills aren't there. They don't have the grit, but meanwhile, they're not looking at the student athlete. They're not giving the student athlete a chance who's getting filtered out because he or she has a GPA below a threshold, or they're not looking at the DACA student because of a preconceived notion, or first gen student. Like, how can we solve that, Corinne? Like what would you suggest to the employers who are on the call about that, to your point?
Short-term projects, right? Like, you're giving a chance to assess the talent in a space where that's low risk. For the student athlete, again, like, yes, their resume is not going to be glowing. It's not going to say, hey, I spent 3 months at this firm and gained all these skills. I was practicing. I was getting ready to win a national champion. I made a national championship. I was working camps. So that's what their resume is going to say. But does that speak to their talent? It doesn't. So how are you making it possible and accessible for them to communicate with you, to show you, like, with real skills, that, hey, I can do this if you just give me the chance. And I think that we're just so used to the traditional way of assessing talent. Like, we have to bring them in for a year and see how they work. And it's like, nobody has that kind of time anymore. We have to make things, we have to be flexible. We have to meet people where they are. And we've done that with our programmings and just how we develop them. You know, so often people say, okay, we have to do Zoom. And it's like, they're zoomed out. Let's go to Instagram Live. Let's go to these different platforms to share the same information in a digestible way for them. And I think employers also have to look at that. We've tried to get, people to understand, like, hey, PGA Tour, come on an Instagram Live with us for 20 minutes, talk about the internship, have someone that has the same experience as our game changers to talk about this internship versus trying to set up a Zoom for an hour, because they're just not going to do that. And you're missing out on an entire population, an entire community that you say you want. People say they love student athletes because they have, they can fail fast, they can handle being yelled at, they can do all these things, but you're not really making it easy to attract student athletes.
Todd, it looks like you have something to add.
I love it.
Yeah, I was just going to echo what Corinne said and just apply it to, from student athletes, apply it to all low-income students, is this idea that, well, we have jobs and these students need to conform to our way of doing things. It's a fine strategy if you don't want to get many of these students. It's not a good strategy if you do. And so the message is, much like everything in the college space right now, the old models do not work for the majority of today's college students, who are different than yesterday's models targeted, right? It's not first-time college goers only who are white and privileged. That's not who goes to college. And so this idea that we can use the same model for recruiting that we've always used is not going to work. The model, there is an effort that has to be made by employers. If they really truly want these students, they've got to try and meet, as Corinne said, meet these students where they are. They can't just expect the students to meet them.
But I want to push
there, Jeffrey. I was just going to say, in meeting the students where they are and really understanding a diverse workforce. Like, for example, for our students, for the Dreamers, I can tell you, yes, they have all the grit and the resiliency, and they're going to be lawyer employers, all of that. But they are also extremely caring about their communities and about giving back and about making an impact in the world. They know the challenges their families and their communities face, and they want to work for companies that are community minded, that are going to be good corporate sponsors. So if you want to be recruiting a diverse talent, that's one of the things that you want to be elevating as you recruit. What are you as a company doing to help the communities that you work in? Because I know that for our Dreamers, that's going to be a big hook is, yes, I can bring you the talent and because I have the skills, but what are you doing for the communities so that I can be involved with your company in helping my community too. Also talking about that this very different population of students and the fact that they're low income and having to work, just a little example, right? And it goes back to Corinne's point, our students can't necessarily take 8 weeks in their summer to get an internship, even if it's paid, because when the internship's over, what is their job going to be? So if they've been working throughout the year in job A, right, and they can continue working that through the summer and make sure that they have a job back in the fall that is going to provide for them and their families, they can't take 8 weeks off of a summer to take a job that even if it pays at 8 weeks is over. Who knows if they're going to be able to find a job again in the fall?
So I want to push back on some of this because again, look, even before the pandemic, diversity, equity, and inclusion was a big issue, and companies were talking.
Was it?
We're gonna talk more about that. But every company, certainly during the pandemic and with the social unrest, every company has updated its website to talk about, to Tania's point, the community support and the diversity. Just about every big company is spending money to, again, market to diverse students and drive it. And there was a question in the chat about, does this create tokenism? Or does this create, call it an inauthentic attempts to engage the students? I mean, what are you hearing? I mean, it's great that the company's website talks about their support for the community, but what are you hearing from the students? And Corinne, I mean, sounds like you have a point of view on this. And then I want to hit Jamie on something in particular in a second, but Corinne.
Yeah, I want to start by saying I am so token. I'm a veteran. I'm a first generation American. I'm a Black female, right? So I check all the boxes. Whatever box is possible on the application, I'm going to check it. When I got accepted to the Air Force Academy, people literally told me to my face, the only reason you were accepted was because they needed to meet a quota. That's fine. Get me in the door however the heck they want to get me in the door, but once I'm in the building, I'm going to do the work. So tokenism may be the thing that people say, affirmative action was something people were like, oh, we're lowering standards. You're not lowering standards. You're just giving people an opportunity that may not have that opportunity.
But flip it on its head. My question is also the other side. Like if you're looking at a company and you go onto the website, and again, one of the comments we heard from a student is every website now has the same picture of the employees with the token Black woman and the token, like, what's your view of that company and how are you getting through that to figure out if it's authentic or real? Or are you cynical?
I am always cynical. And that's okay too. I mean, that's just realistic because I have been a token and in most cases, I am a token. And I think Google is a fantastic tool to do the real research. LinkedIn is a fantastic tool. If you really want to know, find out. You can go on LinkedIn and go to the company profile and see all the people who are listed on their job. And if you see there's 100 people in there that are listed, hey, I work here, and 99 of the 100 are white, and there's that one Black person, then it was really a token versus like maybe they just really only had that one picture available, but they have 60% diversity. Sometimes it just works out that way. So I think we have to be diligent in how we make sure and hold people accountable for that.
No, and I'm happy you brought that up because again, when we're talking with companies, we're hearing a lot of strategies. Yeah, we updated our marketing, or we pay the company to go market to them, market to people from underrepresented populations. The other big one that drives me crazy is, oh yeah, we have our diversity strategy. We're now partners with the HBCUs, which by the way is wonderful if you are. But Jamie, I mean, you're working with schools that are not members of the HBCUs. What are your thoughts when that's when that's a company's diversity strategy?
It takes a collaborative effort. I mean, we've seen this with the work that we've been doing, bringing campuses and employers together to actually work on solutions together. So it takes being not just a member of an advisory board for a campus or a career center, but actually rolling up your sleeves together and getting to work on this. And as an organic result of that, that's where you reach a more diverse group of students than you normally would. So students that can't go to the career fairs, the students that can't come in to have their resume reviewed or go through a mock interview. You're reaching all students within the classroom and engaging at a much more deeper level than a transactional, traditional campus employer relationship as it currently stands right now. So you're reaching more students. And I also want to mention that when we were pulling together our employer working group for this project, one key learning that we had from that experience was that a lot of the career centers, they have great relationships with recruiters, or maybe a couple levels above the recruiter. But when it comes to having a deep, robust relationship with DEI at the companies, with talent acquisition specialists at the companies or heads of HR, it was almost non-existent. So that really is what it takes, is that you need to be engaging with multiple levels within the company. And as a company and an employer, you want to make sure that you don't just have a relationship that's a recruiter career center relationship. It needs to go much more deeply beyond that. And it's something we've tried to model throughout the project.
Well, and it's something that, again, I push back on the employers a little bit, that they talk about these diversity initiatives. But we heard from one of the members of the UIA community that, yeah, we have all of these big employers coming to campus and they're all talking about diversity, but they're all recruiting the same 20% of our students who have a certain GPA. And they're missing out with some of these artificial filters. And Todd, I mean, given the breadth of students you work with, who are, again, by definition, first generation, it doesn't mean that they necessarily check all of the same boxes as Corinne. I mean, are they finding some of the challenges as well?
Absolutely. I mean, you brought up GPA, which I think is a good one, and somebody I think mentioned in the chat. GPA certainly is a good way of getting some information about students, but it shouldn't be the way of getting all information about how a student does academically. The thing to remember about students like ours, they are almost all working, they call it part-time jobs. Part-time jobs means at least 20 hours a week. I don't know about some of you. I certainly did not work 20 hours a week when I was trying to complete college. That is a lot of time that is taken away from studying. And so to us, what we push our students to focus on is not so much what grades did you get, but what classes did you take? And did you challenge yourself? Were you picking classes where you actually learned something and could increase your skill set, rather than just take classes that you can get A's in so you can inflate your GPA? But this idea that if a student has below a 3.5 GPA, they're not going to be the quality you're looking for. Again, I back to my earlier statement, if you want to have that policy, that's fine, but don't expect that you're going to get as many of the students that we're talking about today as you claim you want. If you use thresholds that are just really biased against students like the ones all of us represent.
Yeah, I mean, well, as a quick aside, I mean, what about Noel from the Dell Scholars? I mean, I don't know if you want to quickly tell Noel's story.
Well, yeah, I mean, so Noel was, we've partnered with Parker Dewey to expand the backgrounds of our students. And we had one student, Noel from Texas A&M, who really, really took advantage of his experience at Parker Dewey, and that led him to an amazing full-time position. So it can work, and I don't recall what Noel's GPA was or his major. I think I want to say it was engineering, but I don't think he had a 3.5 GPA. Noel's an amazing student, an amazing person, I should say, and somebody really lucked out on hiring Noel. But all students can't be expected to go so above and beyond as Noel went. I think Noel had Jeffrey, maybe 20 different micro internships with Parker Dewey. It was some incredible
like
number.
that. Yeah, but and one of the things he said to me that rang true, and back to the GPA, it was a quote unquote low GPA. He talked about the fact he went to the career fairs and they'd look at the resume and they'd put it in the no pile, or he wasn't getting, when he was applying for the jobs online, he wasn't getting called back because of his GPA, and then talked about how these projects, all of a sudden, his senior year, they're looking at this list of projects he did, and every employer wants to talk with him. I think he graduated A&M with more job offers than any other student. he talks about building confidence, which Tania, again, back to the dreamers, do you find that sometimes they lack either the confidence when they're engaging with employers, or back to that career exploration and mentoring opportunities because there may not be as many obvious paths?
I actually want to go back to the employers, because right now we're talking a lot about the kids, and bringing back the onus to the employers. What we find, at least what we find with our dreamers, is that oftentimes top leadership at a company says we do hire dreamers. We want this diverse talent pool in our institution, but when you go down the line to the HR, to the hiring managers, to the people who are doing the interviews, they often don't know that, or not know how to put that in practice.
Or don't care.
So there needs to be training of those hiring managers who are at the lower level to understand how do you interview, how do you assess, and what are the myths about particular populations. And so for example, there have been cases where certain companies have been brought to court for discriminating against dreamers because they're not hiring, or they're rescinding offers to DACA people once they find out that they have DACA, and we know that that's unlawful. And when the corporations are brought to court, they're saying, oh, actually we do hire dreamers. That is a company policy that we do hire dreamers, but oftentimes those people that did the hiring or made that job offer are not aware that dreamers should be hired, can be hired, because they have full work authorization. So definitely the onus is also back on the employers to understand how to assess a diverse workforce.
Okay, I want to hit on that for 1 second though, because there was a question that came up in the panel about doing it because check the box or feel like you need to. Isn't there also a business case for diversity? And how do we train our hiring managers who often make that ultimate decision? How do we train them that something is missing if they're only looking at certain populations, or train them that their student athlete's going to bring something unique to the table? I mean, how do you overcome that, Tania?
Well, I think a lot of it is really how do you do interviews of people, and how do you look at a resume, right? And understand. So some of it is you understanding the backgrounds of these people, right? So if you, as a hiring manager, never met, in my case, immigrants, or know the story of immigrants, or understand what they contribute to this country, you're not going to be able to know how to look for certain things in a resume or in an interview, right? Because you just don't have that lived experience. So I think definitely training and having people listen to the stories of the people that they're trying to hire, from the young people to the adult people, then they can understand better on how to assess a particular person that might have a very different background that they had themselves.
And that goes back to Noel's example, the example of Noel that Todd brought up, that all of a sudden he had stories not just about his background, but stories about real experiences that he had working with companies. And again, whether it's Uber or whether it's on micro internships or whatever, helping the students translate those experiences into stories. Mm-hmm. Corinne, it looks like you.
Because Tania, girl, me and you, we're here now, okay?
What about me? I feel left out. No, is that because I don't check any boxes?
You're here.
Me and Todd are the token white males.
Yeah, no, it's okay. It's okay. Sometimes you have to feel that empathy. But no, I think one part of the efforts that we talk about is when an organization has, hey, we're going to create this position, Chief Diversity Officer. That has to be integrated into the entire organization. That is not its own separate thing that's working by itself. Like diversity, equity, and inclusion and belonging isn't just its own office that operates in a silo. The efforts of this organization, or this department, has to be included in the meetings for marketing, has to be included in the meetings for HR, has to be included in the meetings for at the end of the day, we're trying to make money, right? If you're a business. And so if they're not incorporated in every operation, for the business, then we are just checking boxes. We're not really doing it. And so when you integrate the DEI office in HR, then they're having those conversations and training those hiring managers, or having those conversations to kind of eliminate those biases, because we see it with HBCUs. If you get that resume and there's an apostrophe or there's a lush or quote in the front, there's assumptions there, right? So how do we look past those assumptions and look at the resume? Or when the resume says Morgan State, and it's like, oh, this assumption is this student isn't as qualified as a student that went to Harvard. No, maybe that's Morgan State is all that student could afford to go to, but they're just as qualified. And we have to start getting hiring managers to understand how to look past just the words on the resume and understand the background and the stories, or take time to hear the stories of the behind the resume.
Well, and you're also bringing up another important point, which is, again, the check the box efforts. And the four of you have heard me complain about this in the past, that there's a large financial services institution that has an apprenticeship program to provide equitable pathways into professional roles. But when you dig in, it's to their call center or to their IT department. It's not to the wealth management. It's not to the investment banking. And if the students don't have that social capital, or again, have the apostrophe in their name of the wrong school, they still don't have a pathway into those roles. I mean, Jamie, one of the things I love about UIA is it's one of the few organizations I've seen where there's collaboration between the schools, the students, and the employers. And to Tania's point, like, what are you seeing working? What are the employers doing right now that's been really effective or not?
Yeah, no, there's both. I want to piggyback on everything that was said earlier, though, because we saw a lot of promise, specifically with our pilot work at Oregon State, where they created a faculty training cohort program focusing on the strengths that low-income first-generation and students of color brought. So it wasn't a deficit-based perspective, and there's a lot of potential there that we saw for how employers engage with a training that's similar to that. So if we brought employers into such a training that faculty would go through and have them collaboratively redesign curricula together from that strengths-based perspective, it really reframes how they view those students. So it's not just coming from a place of, here are the needs that we have to meet and what we have to solve for, but here are the strengths that they bring. And so that can really flip the perspective on its head for employers to think about the strengths that those students can bring and graduates can bring to the workforce. So I just want to make sure that I mentioned that, because we saw so much promising potential coming out of that pilot. And that
also builds upon the fact that companies are doing this not just because of the social and moral imperative, but the business outcomes.
Exactly. Yep. And everyone wants great career outcomes for students when we get down to it. Like, that is the goal that's aligned across every stakeholder group. So when we're talking about bringing employers and campuses together for internships, yes, we did a lot of foundational research at the beginning of the project, where we were taking a landscape analysis of what's out there, what's working well. We had lots of instances across our 7 universities where there were robust partnerships, and UCF's relationship with Lockheed Martin is a great example of this, where they have a fully fledged training program and cohort of students, they move through that. And so that was working really well, but there are gaps there, and a lot of it has to do with the student experience during the internships, and the students that can, we've already touched on this many times, the students that can actually afford to participate in internships. So number one, they have to be compensated for their time. It just has to happen. We can't expect students to take unpaid internships. And then the employer engagement that has shown the best results that we've tested so far on multiple campuses is when not just necessarily they're serving in a mentor role, which works, of course, really well. And we would expect that if there's a deep level of engagement between student and employer on a mentor-mentee level, but even just simple touch points. So being able to provide feedback on a student-led presentation. So even if they aren't necessarily, the folks that bring that internship together and fund that internship, even just being at the table to listen to a student present something that they've worked on increases the confidence levels in the student, increases the professional skills that the students have because they had to prepare a presentation for an employer, and the employers love it. And we've heard that over and over again, that they just want to see students excel and succeed and build those skills in real time. And so even just small, simple touch points have a dramatic effect on employers, campuses, and students that are involved in those internship programs. It doesn't necessarily have to be invested in and led by an employer for it to make a difference.
Well, we're seeing a neat program launched actually by a few different companies right now where they're engaging their ERGs, their employee resource groups, where instead of spending 10 grand to provide them with t-shirts or events or feel good kind of things, they're saying, hey, take this 10 grand and give internship or micro internship or gig for good opportunities to students from similar backgrounds. And what it's doing is, first of all, the ERG feels like it's a perk. Secondly, because they're able to get help on these projects. Second, it shows the company's commitment. Third, it creates these authentic mentor-mentee relationships between the students and the ERG members as they're collaborating on these projects, and winds up actually building a competitive advantage in their diversity pipelines. And Todd, one of the things I know your program is very focused, or has historically been focused, on getting the first generation students through university. One of the things I know we spoke about a couple of weeks ago is what's happening upon graduation. What are you seeing with the Dell Scholars who have now graduated university? And again, knowing how amazing they are, what advice would you give to employers?
Yeah, so it's hard to answer that question in the post-COVID world compared to the pre-COVID world, because obviously there's a lot of realities right now that just were not issues before COVID started. And so we understand that, and our students understand that. But I think in hiring students like ours, you have to expect that you're going to have to make that sort of little bit of that extra effort that I talked about earlier. You can't just expect that they're going to find you the same way that higher income non-first gen students will find you. I think our students who are, many of them are not attending, as we alluded to earlier, the selective privates or the top tier public schools, but there's reasons for that. And it's not simply because they're not smart and they're not capable and they don't have amazing upside. It's because for many of them, cost is an issue. Their high school's academic reputation could be an issue. The proximity to home and family, because so many of our students have responsibilities even while they're in college to their home and their family. They just can't leave the town that they grew up in. So expanding your traditional college recruiting patterns, I think, is important. And then we talked about it earlier, but offering students paid summer internships for the ones that can take them, and agreed. Not all students can afford. I don't mean financially afford so much as just they can't afford to spend 8 weeks doing a part-time job and then hoping they'll get their full-time job back or their other part-time job back later. But offering unpaid internships for these students is a non-starter. And if experience is important, pre-job or pre-graduation relevant work experience is important. Paid internships have to be part of the company's strategy, or else, again, they're going to be cut off from the students we're talking about.
Tania, did you want to add something? I'm trying to read the nonverbals.
Now, I was also going to say that, there's some very concrete barriers to hiring, at least dreamers. That are quick solutions that we've seen. For example, when students fill out applications online, there's often a question that trips up our students, and that leaves our students out to your companies. One is, the question is, are you a US citizen or a permanent resident? And dreamers are neither, but then they have work authorization. So why not change that question to, do you have work authorization? Because you can get work authorization in lots of different ways in this country. Lots of different types of visas can give you work authorization. So either I imagine companies are asking that question to see if the person can work in the United States. So simply ask, do you have work authorization? Or adding to the list, do you have work authorization through a particular visa? So a lot of our students contact us and with the question is, I don't know how to answer this question because there's no option for me. It reminds me oftentimes when applying to schools, biracial was not a category that you could choose. And then if you were half Black or half Latino, you're like, I can't answer this question. So similarly, that's happening with Dreamers and applications. So there's one little concrete thing that immediately puts off of our students.
And you're bringing up a really interesting issue that's especially relevant right now because of COVID. So again, employers are participating in the virtual career fairs and the virtual info sessions. And one of the things I'm hearing from students, and someone said it before, they're zoomed out. So attendance winds up being down anywhere from 50 to 90%. Students aren't learning about the opportunities. They're not learning about companies. They don't have the social capital to know the difference between an investment bank and a consulting firm, or what it's like working. They hear Pepsi and they think they're going to be stocking shelves. They don't realize the marketing or sales roles there. What can employers be doing right now to, again, better drive the awareness of their companies and their roles for students, where, again, they may not have had a presence at the focus because they weren't the focus schools, or where they don't already have those strong, diverse populations to drive the social awareness? Corinne, you want to? Oh, please.
I would say one of the things that we've been doing at the Dream.us very successfully over the past few months in partnership with Mentor is we're doing this flash mentoring 1 hour sessions. For example, 2 weeks ago, we had employers from Microsoft who came in and just gave 1 hour of their time and did just what you were talking about, Jeff, is like just plain quick education of a student. Right? Like a student, for example, did not know that they could negotiate different packages among different internships that they were offered. And this person in 5 minutes was able to say, you can do this. You are allowed to do this. Or a person who wanted to be a lawyer, but had never spoken to a lawyer in her entire life. And at this mentoring event, she was able to meet a lawyer and connect. So that's like low leverage things. Like if offering an internship takes more resources, more money, but it's super important, but you can also direct your company to mentor. And it doesn't have to be this long drawn out or highly committed.
But what I like about it is for the student, using your example, the student who wasn't necessarily planning to apply to Microsoft and may not have gone to Microsoft's info session, they're still getting value from the mentoring engagement and the opportunity to learn. Yeah. Corinne, it looked like,
and sorry, for the mentoring side, for the mentor side, you're learning about the population, you're connecting, you're listening to their story, and then you're understanding what they can bring to your company in a different way than an interview setting. So it
completely agree.
Gives you the capacity to then go and interview other people like them.
Yeah, I agree, but I actually don't like the word mentor. We changed it to micro mentorship because a lot of mentors have felt that if I'm someone's mentor, I'm solely responsible for the success and failure of this person. And so we've kind of flipped it on its head and say, give 30-minute conversation. Have one conversation with a kid. If you guys are vibing, is going to be organic. You guys will connect again, but just have a 30-minute conversation with someone. And a lot of times that could be the difference maker in getting them to see, oh, okay, I didn't know data scientist was a thing, or now I have a little bit more confidence entering into this field. And I think a lot of times there's just that diversity gap between intention and action and getting people just to act. Like we just need people to do something. Don't wait for this perfect moment. Oh, when we're hiring again, we'll do this. Or when everything's in a perfect state, we'll do this. No, do something now. Start engaging now. Like I said, we are doing Instagram Live. Like do something now. Find ways to connect now. If you're waiting for everything to be aligned and all that stuff, we could be waiting for a long time.
Yeah, and this even goes back to that concept. This ERG had tried mentoring and it wasn't working well. And we lost Corinne. One of the things, oh, she's still here. She's just hiding. One of the things that we found was these individual projects, these micro internships, become a great catalyst for the conversations. Because again, otherwise, like, what's the foundation? It's great when you can provide that sort of natural opportunity to jive, but it's also great if there's an opportunity to talk about a specific project. Jamie, were you going to add something?
Yeah, I was just going to add that something that we saw that had some great outcomes was anytime that you can decrease a student's imposter syndrome by creating a cohort experience really lowers that barrier to entry. So even with informal open house style events that would replace a career fair, a traditional career fair, and doing it virtually, if they can do that with a student cohort and it's modeled as a student cohort experience, or you're partnering with, we've seen an increase in student groups that are first gen focused. So Buckeyes First at Ohio State University is a good example of this. If you can partner with the Career Center and partner with those student groups, then you have a cohort that's going to jump in and try something together. And that's much less intimidating for a first gen, low income student of color that's, maybe not sure where to start and doesn't have that support. Anytime you can decrease that barrier to entry and decrease the level of intimidation, you're going to get more participation. And that also gives them more of a sense of belonging, something that we heard from students over and over again that they were lacking. And again, we've seen this so often. If you have a student cohort experience that has employers engaging with them and career professionals engaging with them, it automatically increases their confidence level and decreases their imposter syndrome.
Todd, same thing with the first generation students. Are you seeing anything different?
Yeah, no, it's the same. I mean, this idea and imposter syndrome is a great point that Jamie just brought up. Our students absolutely feel it. And so whether we want to call it mentoring or micro-mentoring or whatever you want to call it, the more companies and employers can make people available from their company who have similar experiences to our students, the less they're going to feel that imposter syndrome. They are so they've been beaten down, basically, to think that these places are not where they're supposed to be, and obviously that's not right, and it's not true. So the more they can experience people who come from similar backgrounds as they do, the more and more they're going to believe that, yes, this is a place I belong or I could belong, or this is a place I have every right to work at, and so it's not tokenism by making employees who align with the students you're trying to recruit available for them. That's not tokenism. That's giving them the ability to see that this place is a place that they can fit in.
Well, and something just hit me that was really, it should have struck me earlier. In the examples that have been given over the past couple of minutes, whether it's the Gigs for Game Changers program that Corinne mentioned, or the speed mentoring or micro mentoring, what I like about all of these is they're low risk, low commitment, and they create value for both sides. They're not requiring employers to make $1 million investments. They're not requiring fundamental changes in behavior. They're almost bite-sized ways to provide this training. And to Tania's earlier point, companies are spending billions of dollars on diversity training, but here we are years later continuing to have the conversation because the efforts aren't working. Maybe it's finding these low risk, low effort ways to connect both sides to learn. So we're approaching the end of this. Just one last question. I think we tried to hit the audience's questions along the way. If you had one piece of advice to give to the employers on the call and the universities on the call to really improve this issue from college to career facing students from underrepresented populations, what would your piece of advice be? And I'm going to start from the upper left of my screen, which is Tania.
I think for employers is to really understand the population that you're trying to recruit. I'm assuming that you understand that that diversity is going to strengthen your company. So I'm not even going to go there, but I really understand what is that athlete or the low income student or the immigrant, and what assets they can bring to your company, and how you can assess those assets that student brings to your company. And then really do almost like a mini audit of your hiring practices. You know, who are the hiring managers? What kind of interviews? What does your website look like? What does the application look like? And where are the barriers in those areas? And how to take down those barriers, or how you can use those barriers to send the message to the students that they're wanted, understood, and valued, that you know that they bring a value to your company. And then for the colleges is really to create what you were talking about, Jeffrey, is this opportunities to connect. It's really about the connection, opportunities to connect the hiring people with the students in authentic ways, not in career fairs where you get to spend 5 minutes, you know, with someone, but to really understand the students. So for example, I know that you have a flyer that I gave for employers on hiring dreamers, right? It gives you some concrete way of no's and facts about dreamers and myths about dreamers, and to both train the employer and the student about those facts, so they can approach with awareness to each other.
And that's been shared in the chat for the participants. Jamie, advice for employers, advice, again, actionable things employers can do right now and the colleges can do right now.
Yeah, you already know what I'm going to say. Work together, that has to happen. And on a deep, robust level, it can no longer be, let's serve on an advisory panel and share our thoughts and feedback. It has to be, let's figure out how to make this work together and move through solving these challenges that students face together. That just has to be the way forward.
I love that. And as a quick aside, I mean, look, part of the reason we started Parker Dewey is it's one of the few places in education where you have alignment of interests. The students, the universities, and employers all want to fix this problem, but it shocks me how infrequently they're working together.
And
Todd,
sorry,
go ahead.
If I could just add one thing, is that I think for career services to also see themselves as people, as centers that are there to educate the employers.
Yep.
Right? It's
Todd,
not that they're just providing service to the students, is also provide the service of educating the employers about these populations.
100% agree. And look beyond just, again, this is our virtual career fair. Here's how to post a job. It needs to be more. It needs to be that true education. Todd, employers and colleges.
Expand your consideration set. Really revisit what requirements do you really have for candidates, which are there because they absolutely need to be there, and which are there because they've always been there. I'm talking about schools you recruit at. I'm talking about grade point average minimums. I'm talking about experience that you're requiring. Really think about which ones of those are absolutely necessary. Look, you can't hire somebody into IT who's never done any IT work. I get that. But minimums, which schools they've gone to, GPA minimums, which schools they've gone to, how much work experience they had before, really consider whether that is a critical requirement, because if it isn't, take it off your list, because you will greatly expand the pool of students that are available for you.
Corinne, last but certainly not least.
Of course, for universities, start now and really put money. Don't just put the post on social media or make the statement. It takes money. You have to spend money. Spend the money. Find the money, spend the money. For the universities, listen. I think Tania said it best. Understand your students. Hear what they have to say and learn what they need, listen to what they need, and try to go out and find it. Don't stick to what we've done in the past. It's not working anymore. We're in 2020. Everything we thought was what it was is not. So it's time to start listening to who we're trying to impact and creating what they need.
This is awesome. I'm going to add one more, and you guys know what it is because I can't help myself. My suggestion is to everyone on the call, think about a project that you have on your plate that ain't the best use of your time. Or think about someone that's coming to you saying, hey, I could really use an intern right now, or why is it taking so long to fill this full-time role? Let them provide a micro internship opportunity to one of the students that's part of any one of these organizations. They will be excited to get the immediate support on the project, and you can start to break down some of those biases and preconceived notions. The first time they work with a gig for Game Changer, they'll learn about the benefits of the diverse student athletes, or an underrepresented student from Purdue through Jamie's program, or a Dell Scholar or a DACA student through Tania's efforts. Give them the opportunity. And with that, we've run 2 minutes over. Thank you so much to this panel. Again, I'm rarely get fired up about a webinar, but I've been so excited about this for a month, and it certainly did not disappoint. You guys are all amazing, and thank you for the incredible work. Thanks for the great questions and participation from the audience. As someone mentioned in the chat, we're going to be sending around a recording and a summary and some other suggestions. And if anyone on the call is interested in working with any of these organizations, we're certainly happy to make those connections. I'm clearly a massive fan. And again, thanks so much.
I want to end by saying best panel I've been on all 2020.
All day.
A lot.
Best panel all
By
day.
far has been the best.
Great.
It's because of the good looking
Absolutely
moderator.
great.
Yes, of course. Thank you.
The face for radio. Thank you so much. This was so much fun.
Yes, it was definitely fun.
Next time in
Bye-bye.
person.
Bye.
Come in person, yeah. Bye-bye.